tap into your most original thinking, organize your ideas, and create the opportunities to launch your creative work. Unlocking your world of creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson.
Welcome back, friends, to our podcast, Unlocking Your World of Creativity. And this is the podcast where we talk to artists of all kinds about not only their creative inspiration, but how they gain the confidence and the connections to get their work out into the world. And sometimes that's the unlocking part. We can have great ideas, we can have great creative work, but how we get it out into the world can often be a challenge. And there's lots of creative ways that we're learning on this podcast to get our work out into the world. Today, we're talking with Michael Facchinello of the platform and the gallery, online gallery, I guess I could call it, Michael, the Altramira gallery. And we also have three of the artists who participate on Altramira, and we're going to be talking to them about their craft, their work, and also how they use this platform to get their work out into the world. So Michael, welcome.
Thanks so much. Yeah, very excited to be here.
Absolutely. And welcome, Marlena Yanis.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me, both of you. I'm really grateful and honored and humbled that I got invited. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And Gina Werfel, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, and Bruce Dean is with us. Bruce, welcome.
Thank you. And I want to say that I really enjoy Gina and Marlena's work as well. So I'm proud to be here with them. I appreciate it very much.
Well, I think this is one of the benefits of having this kind of a panel and a kind of a cross-pollination of ideas and styles. And we're going to hear about all of those. Well, Michael, perhaps we can start with you and this Altramira concept. Tell us a little bit about how you developed it and where we stand now with it.
Yeah, so Altramira, it's funny that you say having a cross-pollination of different styles and artists. Altramira is really all about that. We're a communal marketplace for artists, their critics, collectors, and fans. We facilitate community around art to provide education, social proof, emotional connection, and seamless transaction all in one place. And we really aim to democratize the art world, opening it up to anyone who wants to participate in it. As far as how it developed, my background is in building software, and I've just always been surrounded by artists. And I looked out into the world and didn't see a place where online art could really be sold in a way that catered to art in the way that it should be. Purchasing art is different than purchasing a pair of jeans. And so there needs to be, and in my opinion, there needs to be more interaction, more opportunity for sort of thought and dialogue going into that purchase. And so Altramira really is different than other marketplaces for art online because we really focus on community. We built it as social commerce, which means there's a lot more interaction taking place. Artists are commenting and critiquing each other's work. Critics are doing the same. And collectors are sort of following along with all of that. And in some cases, contributing their own thoughts, asking questions. And it's just a much richer interaction, more akin to what you might get in person as opposed to online. And we think that's just a much, much better model for it. And that's kind of where we're at. We're early on. We launched 1 year ago, almost on the day. And I think rather than me continuing to go on, I'll turn it over to the artists and sort of get out of the way as much as possible.
I love this convergence, though, before we do that, of social and commerce. That certainly you think of a gallery, the brick and mortar gallery as a place to mingle and talk and, peruse the art and enjoy that setting. And yet you don't always have a chance to, especially maybe for the entry-level collector or for the average art aficionado, to really feel comfortable talking about the process of buying and selling art.
Yeah, and we think that's one of the main problems or pain points that we're solving for. It's intimidating to go into a gallery as a collector or as just a buyer if you don't have the gall to call yourself a collector and sort of ask questions with confidence and to receive the answers with confidence as well. There's been quite a bit of research done around what's preventing people from purchasing art. There's a huge number of people that say they want to buy it, even people who think it's a good long-term investment, and they don't. And the reason given is just a lack of confidence. And so by having this neutral third-party validation where critics are writing about artists, people that aren't the salespeople are giving their opinions, it allows for a different way of learning about art, a different way of participating in the conversation, like you mentioned, where it's walking into a gallery, but in a way that's not high sales pressure and sort of is very trustable because it's not coming from anybody with any agenda other than to participate in a dialogue around art that excites them or gets them going in some way.
Yes. Well, very good. Well, let's take some time to talk to the artist. Michael, thanks for curating this conversation and bringing together various styles. Let's start with you, Marlena Yanis. Tell us a little bit about the genesis and the basis of your art. It's been described as surreal, but it does evoke a certain different emotion. It's bright and friendly, not the kind of scary surreal stuff maybe that we imagine.
Yeah, I really just admire nature in general. So that's where I get my inspiration from. And then I also think of the fact that my paintings will end up in somebody's house. And I always think, what would I want to have hanging in my house? I don't want to have something depressing or creepy or scary hanging in my house. I want to have something that lifts my spirit. So I want the same experience for whoever wants to buy my paintings. So that's pretty much it. Absolutely.
And there is a certain fantasy piece to it, but maybe you can describe a couple of scenes.
Let me think. I don't really intentionally say I'm going to create fantasy per se, but I like to combine, like I said, nature with objects from real life. And I guess that turns out into like a fantasy world, like the painting that you're looking at. I know in the podcast people won't be able to see anything, but this painting that I have right here, it's a cloud in just a normal looking landscape. But I guess the fantasy part is the ladder where you can climb up into the cloud. And not only that, there's more ladders on top of the cloud, and that can take you even to a higher place if you're spiritual. I'm not necessarily 100% spiritual, and I'm not gonna rub it onto people's faces whether you have to be spiritual or not, but there is something out there. We don't know what it is. So
yes. Well, whatever that spiritual
idea.
sense is. Absolutely. And what were some of your influences as you were developing your craft and studying and continuing to practice? Who were some of your influences?
The surrealists, Magritte, Dali, well, pretty much all of the surrealists.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking of Magritte and Dali when I first saw some of your work, and yet, as you said, the nature and the brightness and the positivity does come through.
Yeah. Also, Remedios Varos, I wanted to say. Yeah. And also for new artists that I admire, I wanted to say this is well, maybe not a coincidence, but your name, what's Bruce? You're one of my favorite artists. I saw you on Altamira somehow. I think you connected or I connected. I don't know, but I keep seeing your work and I was like, oh my God, his work is amazing. And now I feel like, oh my God, I'm talking to you. So that's pretty exciting.
It's a nice side benefit of both the Altamira platform and, maybe the podcasting world. It's how we meet
so
each other.
He's now one of, I wouldn't say influence. I'm not copying you, but
please do.
Yeah.
But he would be one of my influence now.
Yes.
One of
that's
contemporary
great.
artists.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, Gina, maybe we could come to you. Gina Werfel is terrific from the standpoint of not only your own art, but also you've taught art. And how do you, I guess, explain the principles of art, and yet people can have their own style, their own fingerprint, their own signature style?
So I love teaching people that have no background in art because they bring, I don't know, a sense of discipline, a sense of freedom. I'll get students who are biological science majors, and the first day they meet me and they say, Professor Werfel, I don't know how to draw a straight line. And I'm like, don't worry. So it's really teaching people about language, that visual language is not unlike written or reading language. And that, once you have that toolbox, you can start to develop your own expression, your own way of expressing yourself. So,
Well, I'm glad you brought up straight line, because I didn't see a lot of straight lines in your work. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of
Right.
brushstroke.
Right.
Again, tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, I'm a swimmer, except I'm in New York for the past month, so I haven't been swimming. I've been walking 10 miles a day. But for me, so my background comes out of plein air landscape painting, where I would go all over the place looking for motifs. And ironically, when I moved to California 20 years ago, at the time I had been living in Connecticut and I was working with reflections in water. And what I liked best is when the wind would come up, or the tide, if I was in a tidal thing, and it would just screw everything up. It would just disintegrate. And I got taken on by a gallery in Los Angeles. And I don't know how the other artists feel about relationships with dealers, but I had a very intense relationship with this guy. And he goes, I love your landscapes. They're beautiful, but I'm not going to take you on until you move into abstraction. So I just dropped everything. And the guy turned out to be a little bit of a creep and, closed his gallery 3 years later. But in the process, I met some other really great mid-career painters, and it really just opened me up. And I realized that critics in the past had written about my landscapes, that the landscape was just an excuse to explore the language. So getting back to your comment about no straight lines, I want my work to float. I want it to feel like you're swimming, or I'm up on the 15th floor here in New York, and the clouds, the sky, it kind of feels like I'm in that floating, ambiguous world. And somebody said to me, what's the difference between painting landscape and abstraction? I said, I could do away with the horizon. I don't have to ground myself. So anyway, there is a kind of structure, though, behind that, all that swirling and organic stuff. I'm very much about thinking about the grid or thinking about the rectangle as a force field, but you would never know it looking at the work.
It's so good. Well, and I appreciated the comment about, I really love your work, but I want you to do something else. Is that an expression of your work? I mean, great compliment, but I want you to do something other than what you're doing.
Well, I think it was really a provocation. And just when I was in the process of moving from Connecticut to California, I had just started dipping my toe into more abstract work, but I was scared to death to show it. And then my next show in New York was half abstraction, half figuration or landscape. And I thought, it'll be like a slide rule going back and forth, And then this dealer came into my life and he's like, you got to take a stand. You've got to be. So, yes. And I think what's interesting, what I've loved about Altamira is when conversations start about a particular painting and people read into the abstract work. And so again, after years of trying to dissolve the representation, like critics would say, you can barely make out what the landscape is in Warhol's paintings. And now I'm on the other side, and I just posted a painting a couple of weeks ago called Slant Step, and it was just amazing the kind of content that people were pulling out of it. So
of their interpretation. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I love that.
So,
Bruce, let's bring you into the conversation. Bruce Dean, your work is also on the surreal side of life, very emotive. I wouldn't call it light and airy, though. How would you describe it?
An effort to be light and airy, maybe. I'm not sure. Actually, it is so new to me. I went in the opposite direction that Gina did. For 40 years, I was an abstract painter. And I visited my daughter for the first time. She was living in Rome. I visited her in Rome for the first time, my first time in Rome. And I went to the cathedrals and the museums, and I came back and it completely changed my work. My work began to be influenced by Renaissance painting. Before then, my favorite painters were Richard Diebenkorn, for example, who has a connection at Davis, I believe. And Mark Rothko, I swore by Mark Rothko. That's what I was aiming for. Even though I started my career as an illustrator, because I didn't know what else to do when I got out of art school. And it was rather naive because I showed Polaroids of my work to people. It was kind of funny, but they believed in it. And I got jobs and I started working as an illustrator. So I was trained in doing figurative work. But I think when it came to deciding what figurative work, what do I want to say? What do I want it to look like? Perhaps it was just the time when abstraction was so important, but also it was my feeling sort of naive about what to paint. I finally asked an art consultant if she wanted to sell my illustrations that I still owned. And she said, well, no, but I can sell that piece on your wall. And it was an abstraction that I'd done for myself. And that changed my life. Although it took me a year to give her an abstraction. I was so married to them. I was so thinking I'll never be able to do this again. It took me a year, but that changed my whole life and I became an abstract painter. In the last 5 years now, I'm going in the other direction. So I went from figurative work to empty interiors, and now birds have popped into my paintings. I don't know exactly where they came from.
Well, I was just about to ask you about birds because I have seen a thread here. I'm really compelled by this painting intersection with the cranes coming across, I would call it Abbey Road at night. Here's
that has been suggested. Absolutely. That might be where that
maybe that's my own. See, that's there, Gina. This is the viewer's interpretation. Probably had nothing to do with Bruce's inspiration.
But when a viewer tells me that, it becomes my interpretation as well. So,
I'll take it.
Abbey Road at night. Absolutely. So
fantastic.
It's interesting. I have learned from some of the people that have reviewed my work on Altamira. John Crowther, one of your writers, suggested that perhaps these birds being in these odd places, these places where they don't belong, might be a reaction to the pandemic. Maybe it's me saying, this is familiar territory, but I feel unfamiliar in this place in some way. And so I wasn't sure why I was painting them, to be honest with you, but I've sort of adopted that as a possibility. That could be it.
Yeah.
But I do find that they're compelling for me. I want to do more.
Well, they are, and the work is beautiful.
Thank
so
you.
Maybe we could keep with the artists here for a second, but describe to us, as we've said about social and commerce, how these things have come together for you and maybe what benefits you've seen on the Altramira gallery site and platform. What does it mean to you as an artist? And Marlena, maybe we could start with you.
More the interaction, like Michael mentioned, it's more interactive. People can make comments, and the critics, I wanted to say, Michael, that your critics are amazing. The way they write, they're so talented. I'm always so impressed. So them writing about my work, it gives me like a different insight, like or reaffirmation of what I intended, to convey. So that's one thing. And then also comments from just regular people. That's also very interesting. And the social part of it, that you can just really easily connect to Twitter or Instagram or, yeah, I think it's really great. So the interactive part of it, and the amazing critics that, I don't know if you're hiring them, do they get paid? Because they're doing an awesome job.
we have one paid critic, and then the rest are all just on Altramira, the same as they would be on Twitter or Instagram or any other social platform.
I'll be happy to pay them, by the way. Just let me know.
Yeah.
That'll be a new fund.
Right.
Yeah. Gina, what has the platform meant for you?
Well, I'm on a couple of other online galleries, and what I love about Altamira is that interactive quality. I mean, I just went to a zillion in-person openings in New York last week, and just the crush of people, the social aspect had been missing from my online galleries until Michael came along with Altamira. So that interactive quality is really important, and I think just the sheer range of work. Some days I'm like, oh my God, I don't like what I'm seeing, and then other days it's like, wow, really interesting people have come on. And Bruce, I have to say, like, one of my biggest influences as an abstract painter is Pazzo's cathedral in Rome, San Ignatius. So, we really are coming at, I mean, it's ironic that you call your painting Intersection. I have a painting that Michael likes called Intersection. But anyway, wow. I think Altamira provides that social marketplace of, interacting with people as if we were in the same room. So
that's good. Bruce, how has it influenced you and helped you?
Well, it's a very different experience than anything I've experienced recently. I began my career showing illustration, but ultimately showing art in galleries. That was an important thing back then. I would have a group show or my show written about by a critic. On Altamira, I find people writing about a single painting. They delve into it, they consider it. They have people responding to their particular response. I'm learning from it. I really enjoy that aspect of it. I also think, Michael, maybe coming from the world he's come from, with your understanding of the internet and all those things, I think that you better understand how to get us out there, how to have more people look at what we're doing and think about it. Every comment I get that's not from a critic on or writer on Altamira is from an artist, it seems, and that's really gratifying. I love hearing another artist say something about my work. So I think eventually it'll become a great sales platform. But right now I like it for just what it is. For me, it's having people see my work and understand more about it.
Yeah. So Michael, I think we're hearing this visibility, certainly, but the empowerment. You've really also created a different kind of financial model vis-a-vis galleries. And maybe you could explain that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So physical galleries have really expensive real estate. The easiest way to be successful as a physical gallery is having expensive real estate. And so they have to pass that cost along to the artists that they represent. There are, in some small cases, apparently galleries that will take 30% from their artists, but I've only talked to artists who have worked with galleries who take 50%. And more, I'm talking to artists who the gallery isn't necessarily selling the work. The work might be in the gallery, but a lot of the sales are coming through their own marketing efforts, whether that's on Instagram or what have you. And so we looked at that and said, what's the lowest amount that we can take and be economically viable? And that's 10%. And so that's what we take from artists is 10%, meaning artists keep 90% as opposed to the 10%. And we just think that's a better way of doing it. There are some platforms that artists can sell on, and those are typically around 30% that aren't Altamira, I should say. And I think they've looked out and were like, okay, physical galleries are taking 50%. So what's a number that anchors down and is demonstrably different, but is still the highest amount we can take. And so that's kind of the different approach. And from a business standpoint, it's a long-term view as opposed to a short-term one. We think that over the long run, if we are the best place for artists to sell their work, for them to market their work, build their sort of following, credibility, reputation, then we'll be really, really successful, as opposed to what is the fastest way we can extract value from everybody. And that would be the short-term view. So we're just trying to take the long-term approach.
Yes. And Gina,
I wanted to add one thing.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I wanted to add one thing really quickly, and that is I'm very glad that we found each other, Michael. But I would imagine if I were a young artist right now, how remarkable it would be to begin with something like your platform. I think it's a great thing for people my age, but also for young artists coming up.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Gina, I was wondering, I guess, from the standpoint of the artist brand, it's not only a creative pursuit, but it's a livelihood. It's a business. And so, does this model change things from your artist point of view? How relevant is it?
Well, first off, Michael, I think when you and I first had our first conversation, probably a year ago, I was astounded that you could make this model work with a 10% commission, because the online galleries that I have and private dealers and galleries, it's all 50%. So bravo.
Thank you.
How to make it work? I think, Michael, you've done a really great job of expanding the network, but I still feel like it's kind of under the radar in terms of the art world. And, just dealing with one of my online galleries this past week, they're based in Paris, and most of my sales are in the United States and Germany. Anyway, she decided to try her hand with art fairs. So it's really been interesting watching that relationship shift from all online to that very interactive, commercially driven art fair model. And, so having literally just experienced this, and all the artists that were in the art fair and the dealers were meeting for drinks in Brooklyn tonight. And I'm really curious, like, how do they feel this shift worked for them? And anyway, Michael, it's made me think you are so damn creative. A month from now, you're going to come up with some new wrinkle in the platform. So anyway, I'm very excited about it, and I particularly like that I'm one of the earlier artists to join the platform, and just watching it mature into a 1-year-old and beyond.
That's great. Well, and Marlena, looking ahead for you, what's on the horizon? We've been talking about horizon lines in landscape, and I just realized I used it in a different context. But looking ahead for you and your craft, but also this business kind of venture on Altamira, how do you see things going forward for you?
To me, I always see life as a learning experience. So I don't see like there's this goal that I have to reach. To me, it's just continuing to grow and grow and grow and get better at what I do, get better at selling with the help of people like Michael with Altramira, and just continue, keep trying. If there's something new that comes, I'll try it. So maybe it's not very ambitious, but to me, I don't know. I think I'm at a point in my life where that's how I see my life. Just keep trying, keep learning, keep growing, because that's just pretty much in any stage of life that you may be. It's about learning. If you feel like you reach a point where, I'm all that, I'm all good, then you're stuck. So that's how I see it. I will just continue to grow and learn for the rest of my life.
Wonderful. Bruce, how are you seeing things in the future? What's next for you?
Well, I just got influenced by Marlena speaking a moment ago. It's true. When I was an abstract painter, I would have to say the person that most influenced the work I was doing in that moment was the person I was a year before or 6 months before. I didn't feel like I could change my work so dramatically at times. I felt like, oh, there has to be something that carries over. And so the work evolved, but very slowly. And now I've reached a point in my career where I just want to see what comes next. I'm looking forward to making changes, having something pop in like cranes did or like interiors did. And I think a site like Altamira is perfect for that. It gives me the opportunity to just explore whatever I want to explore. And I'm looking forward to finding out what comes next. So we'll see.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Bruce, that's the joy about being an artist. We're lifetime learners, I guess. And, like if you stay stuck in a certain mode of thinking or making, you get bored, right?
Right.
Well, Michael, you've heard from the artists that they're learning and growing. How are you and Altramira going to continue to learn and grow? What do you see out there?
Yeah, we have a sort of two things. One, a long backlog of continued innovations and feature improvements on the platform itself to help further connect artists, critics, and buyers in more rich ways and in ways that help artists sort of grow their brand and collectors find art that they love. But I think the second thing more concretely is the Pink Bison Prize, which is a prize that we've created at Altamira to award the best artist who is on Altramira and who's posted on Altramira, which we will award that in February. To participate, you just have to sign up on Altramira as an artist and post some work. It's a little different than a typical art prize in that one part of it, the first half of how we get the finalist is all made up of popular votes. Part of Altramira is an upvoting system, kind of like Reddit. And then the second half, we do have a group of jurors who will be evaluating those finalists and pick the final winner. Among them, we've got somebody who used to work for MoMA. We've got our resident critic, John Crowther, another art podcaster named John Dalton, and then a critic who writes for, I think, the Huffington Post and also has a NPR affiliate. And we're also in talks right now with a museum to come on and be a title partner for that, not sponsor, shouldn't misspeak. But those are and I'm really excited about that because I think that helps get the word out for artists. It helps bring more eyeballs from collectors. It also gets more artists onto the platform. And as I know this podcast is about how do you create and how do you promote, we think that the best way for us to promote is through the community, through things like this. But each artist knows 5 collectors. With the thousands of artists we now have on the platform, if each artist were to tell those 5 collectors to come check it out, we now have a ton of collectors looking at everybody's art.
Fantastic. Well, what a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this and the creative stimulation. And I know the listeners have too. Michael, thanks for coming on and telling us about Altramira.
Of course. Thanks so much for having us, Mark.
And thanks, Marlena and Gina and Bruce, for telling us all about your creative inspiration and how you execute and promote and market your own artwork.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
likewise.
We're going to continue these panel discussions. I really like the interaction. And it sounds like this is even a forum for you guys to talk to each other. Michael, think about a weekly series where we have a Zoom call where the artists can talk to each other. That's a free
Done.
idea. Done for you.
Yeah.
I'll only
Thanks.
take my 10% commission on that idea.
Perfect.
Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this panel discussion as much as I have. My guest has been Michael Facchinello of Altramira, along with artists who are on the platform, Marlena Yanis, Gina Werfel, and Bruce Dean. And their links and coordinates are all in the show notes. So take some time to look at the artwork and look at the stories behind them. We've laughed about some inspiration that sometimes comes out, but there's a lot more behind. You'll even read about how Michael, his aunt, owned a gallery when he was a kid, and that helped inspire him for a love of art, even from a young age. These are great stories, and we love to bring those on this podcast. So until next time, I'm Mark Stenson, and we'll continue to unlock your world of creativity. We'll see you next time.
Unlocking Your World of Creativity with best-selling author and brand innovator, Mark Stinson. This program was produced by BSB Media, creators of IntelliKey Leadership Stories, Unlocking Your World of Creativity, and thepeaceroom.love. We've created a special offer just for listeners of the podcast. You can get the book, A World of Creativity, for a special price of $5.98 for paperback, and the Kindle version is only 99 cents. Go to mark-stinson.com to take advantage of this special offer.